We were married in Nepal in 1994, and for a number of years after marriage, we continued working with the organization. I had been working with, as a single person, the United Mission to Nepal, and we did quite a number of traditional, quote-unquote, traditional missionary activities. And some of the things we did then, which we still do now, include the following slides. Naftziger, my wife, is a wonderful teacher. Let's sort of get that from the slide. She's very animated, and she speaks to many, many women's groups around the country. And that's part of her life then, and it's part of her life now. We're also involved in prayer. That's a part of our lives there. This was a prayer Christmas morning, last December 25th, 2011. We have a baptism in our house on Christmas morning. You see, the homes in Kathmandu aren't very warm. People bundle up because it's a very cold time of year and houses there aren't heated. We're very much involved in church activities still. Youth fellowship. This was a youth meeting or a children's gathering at our church last Christmas. These are simply intended to show you these are some of the things that we've done and we continue to do, along with what we're getting to, which is coffee. Around about 10, 12 years ago, we sort of felt a calling to do something slightly different with our lives. We were very happy with the United Mission with whom we had been working. They underwent a change process, and it was pretty obvious. The writing on the wall was if we wanted to stay in Nepal long term, we better look for other options, because if any of you folks work overseas, you realize you need a visa to work there. And a lot of these countries, you can't go as a missionary, quote unquote. You have to go as a professional. And so about 10, 12 years ago, we saw that the traditional way of working in Nepal, that was beginning to change. And we started to look for other options to stay in the country long term. And one of the motivations behind that change was the realization that each and every day, about 1,000 young people leave the country Nepal. They go as modern-day indentured servants. They take a loan from a local moneylender in Nepal. They'll go, and they'll often go to the oil-rich states in the Middle East, and they'll work there for a period of 3, 4 years. That allows them to pay off the loan to the moneylender. It also allows them to get some savings, and from that they support their families. So about 10, 12 years ago, we came to the realization that there's about 35,000 young people leaving the country every month. Is there anything we can do to make maybe a small impact in that situation? And so my wife, Naftziger, the credit goes to her for what we're doing today. She hired a bunch of local women and began making frozen French fries in our kitchen. A few years later, we added on frozen pizzas. This is our worker, Janaki.
Now, do you sell the French fries and the pizzas in Nepal?
We sell the French fries and pizzas in Nepal, yes. We were trying to do something different, something out of the ordinary. A lot of countries like that, you'll go to a certain street and there'll be 5 shops, everyone selling the same thing. We didn't want to compete with existing local things, so we tried to do something different. Frozen French fries and frozen pizzas. As far as I know, we're the only ones that are making them in the entire country. We're sort of targeting a niche market, doing something different. And at that time, Dan also asked me over lunch, I also became involved in making orange juice at that time. And we became involved with Tibetan refugees. There's quite a number of Tibetan refugees in the country of Nepal. We became involved with them and started making orange juice as well. Together, my wife and I became involved. We didn't even know what it was called then. We became involved in Business's Mission. These are some of the workers in our juice factory. And about 5 years ago in 2007, founded Top of the World Coffee. This is our website, www.topoftheworldcoffee.com. This is our daughter Sushma, and the motto we adopted for our company was that of placing Nepal on the world map for quality coffee. If you folks drink coffee, you probably never drank coffee from Nepal. Most of it from the States would come from Central America, South America. And if you're a real adventurous person, you probably get some from Kenya or Ethiopia or Tanzania. But few people realize that Nepal even grows coffee, but generally the quality is quite poor. So we wanted to sort of work on that, raise the bar symbolically, and raise the standard of Nepali coffee. That's what we started out to do, and that's what we're still attempting to do. Yeah.
How do you do that? What are your goals?
How do we raise the standard?
Yeah, is it at the plant level? Is it at the processing level?
It's mainly working with farmers one-on-one, working with farmers one-on-one. A lot of farmers, they're not dumb, no farmer's dumb, but it's just a village little situation.
So it's the cultivation of the plant?
The main way you can improve quality is through the post-harvesting.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. What happens after the coffee cherries are picked. That's really the crucial part of the overall process if you want to raise the bar. Another way we're trying to raise the bar in the country is via fair and ethical business practices.
Regarding your orange juice factory, how many people do you, the orange juice and the coffee, how many people do you have employed?
How many people do we employ? The orange juice, they're actually making orange juice, and now subsequently they started making pineapple juice and also apple juice. It's still seasonal work though. The fruit, when it's ripe, then they make juice. When there's no fruit, there's no juice processing. So that's seasonal work. When they're making juice, there's probably about 20 or 25 people involved in that seasonally. The coffee work is more regular, more stable throughout the year, but the number's less. We have about, including myself and my partner Tim, I guess we have about 10 or 11 of us working in there.
How long is your season for those two tropical fruits?
The season for tropical fruits is generally about a month, not long. The actual season is more like 3 or 4 months, but like in the case of orange juice, early in the season they're too sour. You can't process them for juice early in the season because they're too sour. You have to wait till the right ripeness is achieved, and then you can make it. Then you have about a 1 month time window, and then toward the end of the season, you could still continue to make juice, but the fruit is getting dry. It's becoming dehydrated, and so the juice yield is low. So for that, for the apples as well, for the pineapple as well, even though the real season, you can eat fruit for 3 or 4 months, you can only actually make good juice for about 1 month.
Are you bringing in, it sounds like you know this expertise on food, coffee, and all this type of stuff, or are you bringing in experts to teach you and then others, or is this all a part of what you do?
Yeah, yes, the question, do we need expertise from the outside or not? When we started the juice factory, I went on 2 trips to Florida and saw how they did it in Florida. That was sort of the expertise we got. In terms of the coffee, it was sort of, actually I did a lot of the coffee stuff as part of my coursework at Eastern. You know, my business plan and all those things. That was part of Dr. Bronco's course, research or what research methodology. So, but the expertise required is sort of very simple, very rudimentary. It's not a high level of technology. Generally, what we do in Nepal, we can sort of learn on the fly as we go.
Have you set your organization up in a way where, God forbid, something happens to you or your wife, that it still goes on?
Yeah, we're very much intentional about the organization being sustainable. So as you'll see a little bit later, you know, our managers and our workers are local people. So that would be the plan, that could carry on even if we, by choice or necessity, cannot be involved anymore. And we have a whole list of guiding principles on our website. I think the one that served as the litmus test for everything is operating a company that's God-honoring in every aspect. And by that I mean what we're doing in business every day. We're doing more than just doing business. It's how we deal with customers, how we deal with the people from whom we buy the fruit or the coffee. We're writing a story. I want that to be a good story. A story that's God-honoring, one that tells of our honesty, our integrity, and maybe financially, it's a longer road to the success, but that's an important guiding factor along the way, is to think about what we're doing and what type of story we're writing each and every day.
I want to know, is your labor seasonal, like the workers that are working for you guys? Because it sounds like your factory for producing apple juice as well as the orange juice is only going to last for like a month throughout the year.
Yeah, the workers are seasonal, but the apples get ripe in October, that's 1 month. The oranges get ripe December, January, that's 1 month. And then the pineapples get ripe August, that's 1 month. And then factory setup, actually making the juice and factory cleanup, the workers are probably employed. The actual factory workers are probably employed about 4 to 5 months a year. And the sales staff and the accounts people are obviously employed year-round. But it is seasonal for most of the workers in the juice factory.
And do you always sell all of your products, or not necessarily?
We generally sell all. That's pretty intentional. You know, how do you budget? You don't want to make too much, or you can't sell it. It's a food product, so it has a shelf life. So it's sort of a fine guess, a fine-tuned guess. Generally, it's better to make a little less than a little bit too much, though.
But what about your competitors?
Competitors, we're the only company in Nepal that's actually making 100% fruit juice. So we're quite different than our competitors who would make juice from concentrate. But the juice we are making is 100% fruit. So it's quite a unique product.
Do you ever think about importing some of the raw materials?
Yes, if we considered importing some of the raw materials, we have considered that. We actually haven't. Nepal is a small landlocked country. It's very hard logistically to get things in and out. You can bring in a whole container, but that's a lot to use, you know, if you import something in. To bring in smaller quantities, you have to bring them in via air freight. Air freight is very expensive, so it's not easy to import. And I don't know, as much as possible, we just try and use local resources, and that's the limit. If we can't do it locally with what's there, then it's sort of probably not worth doing. Yeah, business's mission, make that business for mission, business transformation, B4T, kingdom business. These are all terms that have sort of come on the scene in the last 10 years or so. And they made dramatic inroads into traditional mission approaches, but what people need to realize is that this isn't going to replace traditional mission. It simply allows us to do something different in a slightly different way. And some of the things you can do through business as mission or BAM, it definitely gives access to countries where you can't otherwise get in. That's a real benefit of BAM. Provides visas. And also, it really, in a very real way, each and every day in our lives, it really does provide outreach opportunities, ways to share our faith in practical ways, and we find we're not needing to preach anything. It's people coming to us when they see a difference. This is a quote by Michael McLaughlin. It's 2 pages. You can read this and see what you think of it. I'm going to speak to a bunch of pastors in another 10 days. I figured I'd just throw this in to get a little discussion. It is real clear. This is our coffee shop in Kathmandu. This was celebrating Christmas last December with our staff. And it really does, there's no question that business as mission allows us to get close to people. Whether the pastors can do that with breakfast meetings and meetings after work, I don't know if they can do that or not. But definitely when you're day in, day out running a business, there's not a more congenial way to contact daily ordinary people, both your employees and people coming through the door. It's a very natural way of reaching into their lives. And closeness can also be intimidating because the closer you get to people, then the more they see your shortcomings.
Good. when you say, in this previous slide, it seems like you're talking about transparency is not valued. Is that what you're really inferring there?
Oh, when a culture where vulnerability is not esteemed, it's generally, in the culture where we work, most things are decided behind closed doors. And definitely if you're in a superior position, if you're the head of a company, or even if you're in a management role, generally you don't discuss those things with your employees. The decisions are made behind closed doors, and you simply announce the decision to the employees. And so it's a culture where there's not a lot of interaction between the employer and the employee, and vulnerability or being open, transparency would not be existent, or generally not be a part of that culture.
So, in your experience, are you seeing that your employees are more likely to open up because you're open, or I'm missing, or am I missing something?
No, that's what we find. If you are more open with them, we find that they generally reciprocate. So yeah, in this presentation, start out with just a few slides about coffee, about the post-harvest processing and things. How do you get coffee? I think I heard the story once. A father asked a young boy, "Where do we get milk?" And the young boy said, "Oh, we get it from the corner store." Same with coffee. Where do we get coffee from? From the corner store, I guess, or from Wawa. No, there's a little bit more to it than that. So a little bit about where we get coffee from, some of the blessings and challenges we face, and also a little bit about why Betsy and I remain passionate about business's mission. Coffee growing and processing. Most coffee grows between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, not too far north, not too far south of the equator. And also, in terms of elevation, not too high, not too low. Too high and it's subject to frost damage, and too low and you don't really get good, well-nuanced coffee. So that, in terms of latitude, it has to be right. In terms of elevation, it has to be right. Annually, this is one of my farmer friends, Budraj, and he's standing next to a coffee bush there. They lop them off every year about the height of a person so they can harvest easily. In 1 year, a coffee bush like that will yield about 1 pound of roasted coffee at the end of the day. So if you can add that up, imagine how much coffee it takes to grow all of the pounds of roasted coffee in the world. You start out with about 8 kilos or about 8 pounds of coffee cherries, and at the end of the day, you wind up with 1 pound of beans that are roasted. These are coffee seeds. They need to be protected from the hot sun. And they take about 5 years after they're planted to begin to bear fruit. And this is the way coffee is grown in a lot of the world. Small shareholder plots, small land plots. In some of the big coffee powers like Brazil, they have mechanical harvesting, but in Nepal it's all done by hand. So in mid-December, in the coldest time of year, they'll go in and they'll selectively harvest these cherries. They'll pick the reddest ones, and then the lighter color ones they'll let go. And in the 2-month or the 2.5-month harvesting season, they'll go through and they'll harvest selectively about a half a dozen times. All done by hand, very labor intensive.
How many plants do they, like how many pounds can a farm grow?
In Nepal, there's no plantations. In some of the big coffee powerhouses, I've never been there, but I've heard like in Brazil, they plant, hectares and hectares and hectares in straight rows, and they mechanically plant, they mechanically harvest and everything else. But in Nepal, it's just small shareholders, small farmers, and anywhere from a dozen to 100 bushes scattered around the farm. They're not packing down the forest to plant coffee trees. They're simply using what was originally marginal land for it was originally upland crops, and they're using that to grow coffee instead. Yeah, any typical farmers we deal with might have on the order of 20, 30 bushes. The big ones maybe 50 or even 75, but that's what we're talking about. Not anything huge, very, very small.
So is coffee native to Nepal and it just poor quality, or is it the imported plant?
Yeah, coffee was actually, I don't think it's native to any country. It originated in Ethiopia, and then from there it was sort of carried around the world. So no, it's not native to Nepal. In places like Kenya or Tanzania, where the British were, they've been growing it for over 100 years. But in Nepal, they actually only started planting it maybe 30 years ago, and they've actually only really, the industry's only really grown in about the last 10 years. So in terms of the industry, coffee industry in Nepal, it's in its infancy. Yeah.
It sounds like, you know, different seasons you grow different things. Have you thought about teaching farmers to transition into crops with the seasons so that you have a more year-round productive type of business from your farmers? To teach them, you know, this time of year you plant this time of year you plant that.
You asked if we teach farmers to grow, plant things. Most of the farmers we deal with are subsistence farmers, or very much on the edge. Come on in, please. Welcome in this site. We generally don't try and interfere with farmers' lives because they definitely know what they're doing much better than we do. So the only thing I would do is we advise them regarding coffee, how they can give us better coffee. In terms of what else they're growing, of all their land, they're only using generally a small portion of the land for coffee. It's a cash crop. Generally, they're growing wheat and also rice and other things for themselves, for their own sustenance. And then in addition, they'll have 20, 25, maybe even a big farm would have 50 coffee bushes as well. That would simply generate some cash income. But so it's really not a major part of their overall farming activities. And if we were to be involved in any way, it would be simply to help them grow better coffee, but not to advise them what they should plant when and things like that. These are harvested coffee cherries. Are about this size, maybe about 10 millimeters, and then everything, once they're harvested by hand, they'll still go through and they'll sort out the lighter ones from the darker ones, and then that's what this gentleman's doing. And then they remove the red exocarp, as it's called. And after the coffee cherries are harvested and they're sorted out, then they'll put the cherries in this pulper machine. You have a slide that shows you what happens then. It separates the red exocarp off the outer bean. Anywhere, we'll just skip through that. Anywhere in the villages in Nepal, you have lots of opportunities to photograph. And once that red exocarp, the red stuff is removed, a little bit remains, but what you're left is like 2/2 of a peanut. And then a lot of people don't realize to get good coffee, you have to ferment it. So they take that coffee that the red exocarp has been removed, what they have left is 2/2 of a peanut. They put it in these plastic drums and they ferment it for about 24 to 48 hours.
Do they put it into, do they use anything to ferment it? I mean, they just put it in an empty plastic container and cover it, and that does it naturally by itself.
That's right, it's just a natural process. It sort of starts to deteriorate and it's like biodegrades. But you don't need to add anything, it just sort of happens on its own. If the containers seal well, it'll actually, the temperature inside will increase. It's sort of what happens in a methane digester or something like that. Just a natural aerobic process. And it really does give coffee a distinct flavor. Here, after the coffee is fermented, then it's washed. This is the washing of the coffee after the fermentation's done. can see, it's all hands-on, very much hands-on processes.
Do you only hire Christians?
Yes, do we only hire Christians? No, I think we're actually quite intentional about having a good mix of our employees. So, in our particular company, we have some Christians, we have some Hindus. Hinduism is a major religion in Nepal. We also have one Muslim worker as well. That's a good mix. So after the pulping and after the fermentation, the third major step is drying. It's all naturally done, just out in the sun. And the next slide shows a little bit of the drying. When the coffee's originally just been done fermentation, it's quite wet, so they put it on these drip racks, and then the water drips out, and the air can circulate from above and below. And it's sort of they dry them out on these elevator racks for about 3 days until it gets a little bit dry. And then once it gets drier, then they'll spread it out on these plastic sheets for about the next 10 days or so. And that's how they achieve final drying. It takes about 10 to 15 days, depending on how much sunlight there is. This is a moisture meter. Farmers using that to measure how much moisture is in the coffee. And coffee, for you business students, it's the world's second largest traded commodity. What's the world's, in terms of dollars, what's the world's first traded commodity?
Rice.
Corn.
Corn.
Corn?
Rice?
I'd say rice.
Pardon me? What? No? Rice? No. Come on, folks. What did you drive in today?
Oil.
Oh, gasoline.
Yeah.
Oil.
That's in terms of U.S. dollars. Coffee is the world's second largest traded commodity in U.S. dollars. Number one is obviously crude oil. And after all that is done, after the pulping and the fermentation and the drying is done, you wind up with green coffee. That's the world's second largest traded commodity. And then you put it in a roaster, and depends if you're from the slow school or the fast school. It takes anywhere from about 10 to 30 minutes to roast a batch of coffee. Here's coffee roasting. We have a gas roaster. Flame that's applied below, and then above it's a little, like a cement mixer drum that rotates. And the coffee's, you look in there and see how much the coffee is roasted as it spins around. And that's a trier. You can pour out a little sample and see how much the coffee has been roasted. And then at the critical moment, you take the coffee out, and it has to be cooled down to room temperature very quickly. Otherwise, it sort of just keeps popping away like popcorn. So it's important once the coffee comes out of the roaster, it has to be cooled to room temperature. People ask me how should you drink coffee? With sugar, not sugar, with cream, not cream. I say the key is drink it how you enjoy it. We're really grateful to the farmer friends we have who made those earlier slides available. Some farmers are a little bit secretive, a little bit hush-hush about their things, but because of the relationships and the friendships we have with some farmers, we can go in and see what they're doing, and they're quite open about it. Now, that tells you a little bit about coffee. That's mainly, they talk about specialty coffee, the upper ends, but mainly that's how it's done worldwide. It's not huge mechanical processes. It's just hands-on, a lot of labor-intensive work to get world-class coffee. That's how you get it. Now I'll tell a little bit about some of the blessings and the joys and the trials of running a business in Nepal. This is our coffee shop in downtown Kathmandu. That's the capital city of Nepal. We opened this last December. And we're really blessed. This is Tim Rask. He's from Texas. He's my business partner. we both invested money in the company, and we're not there just to make money though, we're there to provide jobs and things. Mrs. Reether, she's our shop manager. We're blessed to have a really good local manager. She does a good job of running the shop. And we're really blessed that we have a number of donors and mentors, people that are interested in what we're doing there, people that believe in what we're doing there, and that's been a real blessing to have that support. We're especially blessed that 2 of our workers have come to faith, and it's not because of anything we've done, it's sort of them coming and asking questions. You want to tell a little bit more about them, Naftziger?
Yeah, the guy, his name is Jiwan. He is a cook in our restaurant, coffee shop. And when we started our coffee shop, it was like we started in I'm sorry, I'm in back. I don't know where to go. Maybe I should go a little bit up there. I don't take too much time, but as people, they make us like and in our these 10 years or whatever it's time, that girl became a Christian, making a French fry, and she was coming and asking lots of questions, and she was really Orthodox Hindu before, and she became a Christian in our journey. And Jiwan, he was a second cook in our restaurant, and I had a chance actually to clean the fridge and the kitchen and everything. I'm a cleaning person, so I just work with the staff and cook and everybody, and it was nice time with them. And before Christmas, we had a little celebrate with the staff, so we took some little gifts with them, and just we had a nice sharing time, and we just give an invitation. Oh, you can come to our church. We have a Christmas party there. We have a fun time. So, and they came. And this guy was very interested. He just loved the people in the church, their love and their warmth of really fellowship, and he just loved that. And he started to come every Saturday. We go to Saturday church there, and he just coming. And mid-February he came. He said, "Man, I want to get baptized." And I said, "Well, you have to go to our pastor, and you have to take classes, and you have to really know about these things." And he went to my pastors, and he really did good job. And this Good Friday, he had a baptism in our baptistry.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
So it's sort of neat because, like Naftziger said, we don't have to chase people down. They come to us, and we just sort of have to be there and respond. It's a really bad thing. So it's a real blessing to have that. And now, beyond the blessings, of course, there's challenges. Some of the challenges, there's this group called Transparency International that rates countries in terms of integrity, in terms of honesty, and Nepal is going down. I guess they're now 143 out of 180 nations. So that's a real challenge to try and run an ethical business in a country where generally things aren't done very ethically most of the time. Another challenge is nowadays is the peak of the hot season in Nepal before the rains start in mid-June, and because of that, we're without electricity. Out of any 24-hour period, we only have electricity for 12 hours. 12 hours, the government supply is not there. That's called load shedding, and that's a reality of life, not only in Nepal, but many developing countries. So just use your brains, folks. Think about running a frozen food business where you only have electricity 12 hours a day. We have these things called PV cells, photovoltaic cells. They charge batteries, and they keep some of our basic equipment running, but they can't run real heavy fridges and compressors and things. So it's a real challenge to run a business in this type of environment. Nobody likes soggy pizza. We're also challenged by quality control issues. The mozzarella cheese, like we use on our pizzas, go to the store, buy it once and it's okay, and then go to the same shop a week later, buy more cheese to make more pizzas, and it's not any good. It's really hard to get consistent quality in our raw materials. And it's also it's really humbling. Tim and I have brought a fair amount of financial resources into the business, a huge amount of education into the business, and it's really a challenge each and every day to try and operate a business in that environment. It's my firm conclusion, if it's ever going to have success, quote unquote, it's only going to be because God is in it.
Amen.
So, with the challenges being so immense, why do we feel passionate about business's mission? First, unquestionably, one benefit is I get a visa out of it. That's a real, point. Running a business, it gives me a valid presence there, it gives me a visa. Also, it really is gratifying to be able to provide jobs in a country where there are so few jobs, so that's very gratifying. It's also running a bona fide business, we're paying our taxes, we're trying to do things right, so in a small way, we're contributing to the local economy. And also, I guess, the thing that gives us the most gratification is unquestionably it allows us to speak into the lives of our employees, and also it allows us to speak in the lives of others with whom we come into contact. People do see a difference, and they often just ask questions. We don't have to chase them down. Certainly don't have to stand up and preach, but questions are coming all the time. It's really quite amazing. So, yeah, we're really blessed to be part of a larger group there, a Christian business network. We call ourselves Great Commission Companies. And we have meetings every month, and that's a real exciting time. It gives accountability, it gives us support, it gives us camaraderie in a very challenging business environment, and it's always a good time together. So what does the future hold for business's mission? I guess one thing we realize, it's really important to have a business plan and also a spiritual plan to keep things on track. Also mentorship, accountability. And then a frank reality, the bottom line is how deep are your pockets, We're still in this stage of this business where we have to keep digging in, but it'd be nice to see, frankly, that level off and see us be in the black sooner or later. That's a real challenge if you ever go and start your own business, obviously. We do, as mentioned, to stand over lunch. We have internships available. Somebody wants to come to Nepal this fall. Just happy to talk about experiences. So, folks have any questions, be happy to answer them. My wife does say that she can do a better job, so feel free to direct it at either of us.
What type of salaries are you able to offer your employees?
What type of salaries? We offer a fair salary. It's not fantastic. We try and do the most we can, which is okay. It's definitely, the country, they say like the per capita income is $300 per person per year. Our employees would get about $100 per month. So they're getting 4 times the national average. But in Kathmandu, where we live, 4 times the national average doesn't really go very far. We try and be fair. In fact, when we go back now in the end of July, it will be the next fiscal year. Once a year, mid-July, we look at the salaries and things and try to be as generous as we can. But it is a real challenge because even though we do pay fairly well, enough is never enough in that culture.
You spoke a little bit about how your business practices and the way that you live your life, you're hoping to have a positive impact on the local community. Are there any aspects of local life that you feel have had a positive impact on how you're running your business and how you do things?
How our business and lives affect the locals. Well, we hire local people, like our coffee roaster, the fellow that's doing our coffee roasting while I'm here. He's our neighbor just right down the road. And people around where we live, our neighborhood, they all know we're running a coffee company. It gives us a valid presence, and they know we're providing not a huge number of jobs, but they know we're providing a handful of jobs. So in terms of reaching the community, we're valid there, we're bona fide there. ask anybody. And yeah, they'll all say, oh, they go out to church Saturday as well. So that's part of it. So it's transparency. It's just living a normal life. And that's the thing, if you're doing things right, then the locals vouch for you, you know. If there's questions on any account, the locals are there and they vouch for you.
A weird question though was,
How-
has the culture had an impact on you, right?
Does the culture have an impact on us?
Yeah, I think
I think it goes both ways, yeah. Definitely in terms of, we confront ethical issues all the time. And so when we definitely in interpreting those situations, we need that input. So that would be a real thing. In terms of the ethical issues and this great commission companies I mentioned, it's not just foreign businesses, it's also local business owners. That would be a real environment where we can sort of sort out those things, and it does work both ways. Studies at Eastern were good, you know, in terms of the technical stuff, but a lot of the ethical stuff, you can only interpret that locally. Question?
I did not see anything with packaging and distribution. How do you get your product out to market, and who is your market?
How do we get our product out to the market?
And who buys your product? How are you getting it to the masses?
Yeah, we're not getting it to the masses. That's why we need somebody to come and do a marketing study for us. We thought we had a pretty unique product, guaranteed fresh roasted coffee. So if you go to our website, there's a little order box there. You can click it. And then we often get questions from overseas, where do you deliver and how far? And we have to sadly reply, we only deliver in the Kathmandu Valley. So we're constrained to the local market.
Okay.
Most of it's being bought by resident expatriates or by more upper class Nepalis that have traveled abroad, people that know what a frozen pizza is, people that know what a good fresh bag of roasted coffee is. Those are our main clientele. As far as how we reach them, that's still a mystery. We've tried a lot of different things. We tried advertisements in the local papers, that didn't work. We tried handing out samples, that didn't work. We tried door to door, that really hasn't worked. Recently we've been trying Facebook, a lot of clicks, a lot of interest, but no sales. That hasn't translated into sales. So it's sort of a mystery.
I have a follow-up question about how much government involvement is in regulation, because you're handling food products. Do you have inspectors and things like that coming around?
Government regulations, yes, very much. In fact, when we get back on the 31st of July, and that's one of the first things on my list is every year we have an annual factory inspection. It's a poor country, but they're really up on some things. So every year, a mandatory factory inspection, they'll come out and inspect, and they're quite serious about it.
Do you get fined at all? Do you ever get
They
fined?
wouldn't fine us, I don't think, but they would simply give us compliance measures.
Okay.
If we weren't compliant in certain areas, they would make a list of things where we didn't comply. And we would be expected to bring those into compliance measures. That plus an annual audit, those are very much required. And also, probably the most important piece of paper would be what they call a tax clearance certificate. That shows that we paid the taxes that we owe, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Sorry, question here and then one
A
back.
quick question about, do you deal with anybody with disabilities? Do you
One of our workers here in the juice factory, so he was in a wheelchair. That's the only person we have dealt with. It's something I've often thought about, frankly, but yeah, good question. Dealt with one person. Question there in the back.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're trying to get into the black and that you're putting, in terms of your finances, and you also said that you have to have deep pockets. What types of other subsidies are you getting at this point?
We don't get any subsidies, it's just all out of our own pockets. We brought a fair amount of money to the table, personal. And Tim, my partner, also brought a fair amount of money to the table, personal.
So it's operating based on that equity?
Yeah. And also we have had some donors.
Okay.
A donor donated the coffee roaster. And also, I was talking to Stan over lunch, Don Colosi, one of the Eastern students here 3 years ago. He came to Nepal, did an internship, and he helped us build a second roastery in country. So it's been a lot of money out of our pockets, but it has been very definitely supplemented by people that believe in what we're doing there. And some have contributed sweat equity, and some have contributed hard equity as well.
What percentage of that is donor?
Donor, out of the total?
Yes.
Out of the total invested to date, donor would probably be, I would say about 15%, 15, maybe 20 max, something like that. Question here?
Do you think probably, I mean, there's definitely the market for, like a local market for the apple juice and orange juice.
Yeah.
But then in terms of coffee, from what you just talked about, it sounds like you're mainly catering to either the expats or the highly educated or probably rich and tall people. Because it sounds to me really familiar. Because I'm originally from China, and I have a friend. What they did, it's kind of like a similar thing, but what they did was they started a gym, and in one of the big cities in China. And so it turned out to be a gym that's like, I mean, kind of geared towards like people like the locals, because I'm Chinese, right? I mean, when I was in China and I see this gym and I'm like, well, it's probably just geared towards foreigners, rich Americans. But even though the gym membership is not that expensive, so I think it probably sounds like that if the local market that does not have a demand for your coffee, then probably coffee is not the correct strategy for you to make a profit, to make this whole thing sustainable, because you only have that small market.
Yeah, it's a good question, a good point he's made about whether coffee is really what we should be doing or not. So yeah, if you want to come and join us in September, please.
Have you had your marketing class yet?
Yeah. But that's not business marketing.
Well, I want to give you enough time to get settled for your next classes to start at 2:30. That gives you a few minutes. So, Dale, thanks so much. Will you join me?